tech currently transforming access to quality education, particularly in the remote communities, and we're going to use Niger Delta in particular. Sandra, would you like to start, or?
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so delighted to be here. Education, like you rightly said, is something everyone knows, but technology enables a lot of things like accessibility. Now, for education to be accessible to underserved, to the underserved population, to the rural people, we should think about offline first. Right now, mobile adoption is really spreading. So you could go to anywhere and see people holding smartphones. So, but when you're thinking about giving them accessibility or making education accessible to everyone, we should have in mind our status. We are Africans. What are the difficulties we face? Internet connection.
Okay.
So we should think about maybe when we are building such technologies or we're introducing technologies that would carry education to everywhere, we should think about the ones that can be accessible offline. We should think about the ones that have that can be accessed with low internet coverage. We should think about that way it's not so costly. That way it's simple. It's just basically accessible. It's open for everyone from every socio-economic status to access it. It's not advanced. It's accessible. Basically. That's just what I would say. So the word today is accessible because that's what technology does. That's how it helps to spread education to places where maybe it's difficult to penetrate. So that's what I would say.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Does anybody want to have a quick addition? Or Alex?
Yes, so I wouldn't say completely contrary opinion anyway, but something that may sound contrary. I want us to start seeing children no more as numbers. I want us to start seeing children as real children. What a child in Bere-Mont enjoys, that child that is in the most remote places in Niger Delta should actually have the same experience. So if you are not telling a child in Bere-Mont to go to offline, you shouldn't tell that child in that remote village to go offline. Because the next president may actually be that child in that remote village. So the point is, government should now know that they have to prioritize some very key investment, which has to do with one, energy, right? Two, connectivity, and trust me, there is already Starlink.
Yeah, but Starlink is expensive.
No, it is not. It's an investment, right?
Okay.
So when you approach something as a cost, it can be expensive. When you approach something as an investment, it is not expensive, because if you invest 106,000 in a class, in a school of, let's say, 300 children,
okay,
and one person grows up to become the president or become the UN Secretary General, that investment paid off. So what I'm basically saying is, let us not keep giving those children in remote villages alternatives as offline so that they will be comfortable in poverty. No, we should try to make sure we uplift them. No matter how difficult it is, let us make that investment. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so I'll come in. I'll come in from a very practical perspective because I build and I construct smart schools.
Okay.
So basically, as a line of business, Wildbe Interactive, which I represent, has more than 80% market share on the continent when it comes to interactive technology. So 2 days ago, we were donating a smart school to the government of Ekiti State. And the key question the governor asked me at that event in Ado Ekiti 2 days ago was, I didn't make this investment because I wasn't sure how I would secure the hardware and the equipment I was investing in. So if I'm putting interactive flat panels into classrooms, which every child should learn on, if I'm putting tablet computers and PCs and solar power and internet connectivity from Starlink, whether it's in a rural community or in the city, I don't want to have a situation where someone who doesn't like me or my political party wakes up tomorrow and sets that school on fire. So basically, from a practical perspective, urban-rural access, same access, is absolutely crucial. We should have the same experience anywhere we are because we're all the same. And I'm happy that on the panel is also one of our key clients, which is Elfrida Omole, who's used technology to run her school for many, many years. It's not about how expensive it is. And there are different ways to sort that out. When government is investing, the key question we hear from both government and private sector investors in technology and education is, it's always the same question, cost of acquisition. And one thing we must understand is this. Each one of us sitting here, there was a cost to training us. Every medical doctor, every engineer in this country, we paid, if you went to a federal government college, for example, you paid almost nothing for having that education. Everything was almost 100% subsidized by the government. Back in the 80s, back in the 90s, back in the 70s. So the key thing about this is, I'm very, very big on giving back. And so in terms of bridging that cost gap or that investment gap, we're very big on those who've had the benefit of being blessed in your own day and time in going to the best schools that Nigeria had 30 years ago, 40 years ago. It's very, very critical that you give back. Absolutely critical that you give back to your alma mater, to your community. A few years ago, in November last year, we had the opportunity of giving back to a community, Ohafia, and it was deliberate on the part of WowB to do that because Ohafia hadn't had power for more than 4 years. And we had to turn an existing school around within 30 days. And that 30-day turnaround in terms of putting infrastructure into a school that had nothing, when I say nothing, physical building only, but turning that school around into a 21st century school in 30 days was what you'd call a wonder. And so from that same school today, which was turned around in 30 days, that community now has a community training center where skills acquisition, the building has gone beyond being a learning space.
Okay.
Skill acquisition center for the rural community. Also add the fact that the school also becomes an in-service training center for existing teachers to be able to access the best technology in the world in terms of learning. So you don't have to go to the teacher training centers anymore. Those existing schools become where the teachers can go and learn the very best. So whatever we do, whether it's in the creek, and I know there are interventions, I'm going to close with that. Whether it's in the creek that we're intervening, especially since we're in the Niger Delta, or in the city, one thing is clear. If the oil and gas companies can operate offshore, I repeat, offshore, with the best of facilities offshore, I think an absolute fraction of that cost can bring the best of learning to every community in the Niger Delta. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So I'd like to get to another question here, and I would like to bring... like to add something quickly, okay?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to my fellow panelists. It is just as Mr. Onyia said, every child deserves equal access to quality education. But the reality is not all of them have access to the same resources. Looking at the students in rural communities, students in undeserved communities, and even students in the government-owned schools, a lot of them do not have access to most of the resources to use educational technologies. Now, we cannot fold our hands and wait for government to come in with their intervention. We can't wait for government to put in all the infrastructures. So what we are doing as innovators in the edtech space, we are trying to introduce some smart solutions that can work on low bandwidth. They can work even offline to ensure that the students, even in the undeserved communities, have access to some of these technologies. Myself, I was a product of government school, and I know how marginalized we were as at then. Like, when we come in contact with students in the private school, we feel a bit inferior because we feel we don't have access to most of the things that they do. And so I decided last year, I was taking EdTech to the government school, and we did it last year. When we went to the River State UBE board, it seemed as though it was impossible. They said, no, this thing cannot work. The school do not have the devices. They don't have the technology. There is no electricity and several others. We said we will make it work. First, we have a solution that works offline, like the CBT and some of our functionalities, they work offline. And so we're able to deploy this solution in some of the selected schools that the River State UBE board gave to us. And we piloted it, and it was successful. For the first time, you could see the joy. Like, I was almost crying when I saw the joy. When I saw the students expressing how they felt for the first time being able to use computer to write exam. Now, if we had waited for government to do this, probably they would have been out of school and never had the privilege to be able to have access to some of these things. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Quickly, please.
Okay.
Just a few seconds.
Okay.
So this is just basically what I was trying to say. Because when they leave the schools, they may not have access to the Starlink anymore. They are able to maybe download they still have the same content. It's just offline. They can still access it. It's the same content, but it's offline. That's basically what it means. They can access it anywhere. When they go back home to their parents who may not really know how to operate tabs or do whatever, they have it downloaded in the system, or they take it home, and they still have the same content that the urban children have. So okay. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. Now, let's move on to a very important part of our discussion this morning. This afternoon. It has to do with our culture. All right? Now, Mary, I'm going to come to you on this one. You start me off, all right? How can we ensure that EdTech and the solutions that it's offering right now stay culturally relevant, affordable, and accessible across Niger Delta, across Nigeria, and across Africa? Because these days, I hear parents complain. We are scared of what our children may see on television. We're scared of what our children may come across on YouTube. Even the cartoons that everybody used to think were safe, you've had scientists and you've had watchers come through and say, well, that idea might not particularly suit us as Nigerians, as Africans. Mary, please.
All right, thank you. In Africa, we have our peculiarities. And these are the things that makes us unique from every other person. And one of those peculiarities is our culture. So regardless of any solution that we're building, whether in the EdTech or outside the EdTech, we must be able to preserve our culture because this culture is our identity. Now, for EdTech to be culturally relevant, accessible, and affordable, then innovators must build in mind with the realities of African learners. Because now we are not building for those in the developed, in the US or any other part. We are building for Africans. So if we are building for Africans, it means we must speak their language. We must relate with them in a way that we must use context that they are able to relate with. And that has to do with building, having in mind the realities of the learners. And one of such ways to do this is local content. You have to incorporate the use of our African languages into your solution, like embed them, use context that the learners will be able to relate with. That is why at Cloudnotte, we don't just build solutions anyhow. We tailor learning content to reflect a nation's curriculum and even to the local needs of every learner. Then another aspect I also talk about is affordability. Your pricing. Most times, some persons tend to overprice their solutions, making it difficult for some schools to be able to afford. Now you're building these solutions for users. Who are the users? They could be students, they could be teachers, they could be schools. Anyone within the education space can be your users. Now you have to build in mind that these people should be able to afford and sustain my price. So you have to be price considerate when you're fixing your prices in a way that they'll be able to afford it. You know, we even went down to the point of where we subsidize our price like 3 times for schools in rural areas and schools with low income through our partnership with AFED, Association for Formidable Educational Development Force. And finally, the offline accessibility is very, very important. Create features that can work offline. Regardless of where they are, whether they are in the urban or in the rural communities, will be able to access these things.
Thank you. Elfrida, I'm coming to you on this one, right? Now, you are smack in the middle of this conversation. Not just, physically now, but I'm talking about, literally and metaphorically. Yeah. These days, schools around Niger Delta, everybody wants to go, oh, hi, my name is. Everybody wants to go, oh, hi, my name is. If we're bringing EdTech and we are meant to make it culturally viable, representative of what we as Africans and as Niger Deltas are, how do we go about doing what she just said? Because almost every school, these days, if your child doesn't come and greet you, hi, mommy, they think you're not sending your child to a good school.
Exactly. All right. Thank you. The truth of the matter is any design must take into consideration the environment where it's being operated. Culturally, we're here in Africa, we're in Nigeria. I want to talk about the fact that if we're going to put content out there, and it's going to be video content, and it has to do with a child, the child should look African. It should actually be designed like yesterday and today, people saw me and talked about my looks, my hair. I was asked today if I was on the panel for arts. And I said, wow, it's working, So the local content must be designed to suit us as Africans. I loved what you said. Why am I saying this? These days, we have a lot of schools coming in. And at the end of the day, let's be honest, I asked someone a question recently. I said, okay, I understand now that the forex, the rate of exchange is so high, but you still have parents that send their children abroad, not at university level, at secondary school level. So I said, what do we stand to achieve? I'll tell you that at the end of the day, the child just develops a culture out there that is really English speaking. So the child is going to come here, and if the child is going to come here rather, which the child should, and operate within the Nigerian culture, right? They would say to the child, what's up now? How you doing? You'll be like, hello, hi. And you are like, what do you get at the end of the day? The child becomes English speaking. That's what I call it. But at the end of the day, in the context of our operation in Nigeria, are they English speaking? I wouldn't want to mention names, but I mean, if you talk about a lot of our rulers, they don't sound English speaking. Yeah. They sound very aggressive. So at the end of the day, have we really educated this child to live in an environment? So there are 2 things. Of course, purpose is very important. Why are things being done? I want to also talk to developers. When systems are being developed, you need to really understand the users. Who are you developing for? What does the average child understand? What is the goal of the average child? What's the purpose of their education? Teaching, the end goal of teaching is learning, and the end goal of education is to be able to solve problems. What problems are they going to solve? What should the content be like? It's quite important. Now you have, there are a lot of developers now, even they've gone as far as putting what we already use online, like we talked about the WAEC, the JAME, TME, they're all there. There's content there to, train students in preparation for their exams. However, the other content should be culturally right to teach us, because like I said, the end goal is for them to acquire knowledge, and this knowledge must be culturally right to fit the society where we operate. So I feel it should be more inclusive. And with that, the learners, there should be research that should be done to understand the mindset of the child, to understand what do they need. The adults as well. Right now, we have the clash of the generations. We have the older generation thinking the younger generation should know this, this, and that. But did we actually train them? I keep on saying the younger generations, I look at them as defective goods that were developed by us at the end of the day because we failed to educate them on a few things. So what do? We need to provide them with the relevant skills. And this can be done through EdTech because the truth of the matter, one of the popular saying in education these days is the fact that if they cannot learn the way we teach, we need to teach them the way we learn. And they are digital natives. They learn through this. So there should be relevant content that should be culturally right to train them and educate them, and that's what I can say on that. Thank you.
Mr. You want to say something?
Yes, so very briefly. In Ekiti 2 days ago, one of the classrooms we had, the video content running on our Owhor board was the history of Ekiti State, running in a classroom with Ekiti State students. Now, that's very, very important because that way they can connect to their roots. We also have lots of developers now who are doing cartoons and all of that using I know quite a few of them, using local names, local heroes and all of that. That's, the messaging behind that is absolutely important in terms of us being able to transform and being able to, sell what our culture is all about. It's also absolutely critical that developers who are developing the content, I'm going to say that education is warfare.
That's heavy.
Education is warfare. One of the most stupid things any country can do is to keep borrowing another country's curriculum. And so, if you keep borrowing another country's curriculum, it's only natural that they're going to sell you their history and the way they behave, so you're going to act like them. Until you develop yours, and you're proud of yours, and you are able to sell yours to other countries, that's why I say it's warfare. So the Chinese will never send you their best educators to this country. It's not going to happen. They're going to keep them homegrown. You see the issues with Harvard. They're going to keep the best in their country. It's nearly impossible for you to have a Harvard scholar or a Harvard professor coming to teach in Nigeria. It's not going to happen. And when you look at the principals or the leaders across a lot of our secondary schools in Nigeria, the leading private schools have principals of a certain color, not Nigerians. They're going to instill their culture into you. That's what you pay for to send your kids to those schools. So in whatever we do, and I want to really, really appreciate all our public sector, our government school principals and all of that in that space. It's warfare. If we can encourage what we have as our local, digitize it, make that content, keep on growing that content and making it better, others will buy it. Same thing has happened in Nollywood. The same way is going out. Our kids who are abroad are so proud to speak Pidgin English right now because most of what they listen to in music, that's what they're hearing. They want to hear more of Yoruba. They want to understand what are all those slangs all about. That's what it's all about. We use those same things to reinforce our way of life.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I have one final question, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. This is going to go to all of you. Okay, Alex, you have something to chip in very quickly.
Yes, I want to chip something in. It's also going to be a little controversial anyway. Firstly, there's this thing in tech. You say, would you want to keep reinventing the wheel? Or would you want to keep trying something that never works? And then you call it culture. Firstly, I have this concern. We teach our children, we train our children to be able to solve the British problem of 1958 in today's world. Secondly, what we call culture, is it not time that we have to start innovating from it? There's this concept that I've gone through, this monkey in the cage concept, which basically what we used to call culture. So monkey in the cage concept is, they brought like 5 monkeys together. Once they brought 5 monkeys together, they gave them a rule. Anybody that raises their hand to touch the light bulb, they will pour water for the 5 monkeys, right? The first person wants to do that, they poured water in the 5 monkeys. The second person tried, they poured water in the 5 monkeys, right? So everybody knows that whenever you raise your hand, they'll pour water, and they don't want it. They now removed one monkey, brought a new person. This person didn't understand the rule. Next day, the person wants to raise hand. They poured water. They continued that experiment to the point that they removed all the old monkeys. So what happens is, anybody that wants to raise hand, the rest of the monkeys does what? Rush that person to beat the person. Many of them don't even know why nobody is allowed to raise their hand. So everybody feels that whenever you come to the cage, do not raise your hand. So what happens is, for that generation, and the generation and generation and generations to come, they are going to live in behaviors that they don't even understand the foundation. And with that alone, there's absolutely nothing like an innovation. So what happens is, in the 8th or the 10th generation, children start doing what? Studying history and asking questions. By the time they go back, they will now do what? Start finding out the reason why nobody's even... Because I used to ask myself, why is it that if I want to eat rice, there must be meat? So the point is, there are a lot of things that we've done in this part which has to do with our culture. Nigeria is one country that you see that every year we keep doing what? Going down. Don't you think we need to go back and understand? Because everybody, for instance, go to Bayelsa, one of the most educated people the older generation of Bayelsans people are the most educated people in the country. Meet people like 70, 80 years, see the way they speak, see their understanding. And then you see the newer generation, they are different. Can't we go back, see how things were done in the time that things were working, correct it, bring it as part of the new generation, so that by the time we are educating this coming generation, we're not going to keep making that mistake that have held Nigeria back for the past 50 years. Because at the end of the day, what's the purpose of education? To do what? Move the society forward.
Okay, now that brings me to my final question. How can EdTech actually contribute to critical thinking? A lot of the time, we've been accused of churning out half-baked graduates. But now, there are new ones here.
Yeah.
Critical thinking is something that seemingly has been lost to, I would say, a generation of Nigerian youth. So how can EdTech, I'm going to give everybody here a minute because we have other things to do and we need to get one or two questions. So I'll start with you, Sandra, and I'll just go down the line. How do you think EdTech can actually help to aid critical thinking? Not people getting 450 in JAM. That's great. But we're talking about critical thinking.
Technology is an enabler. It's not really the content, right? But the content is important. So make it practical. Let everything they learn be applied to real-world projects. Make it something that they can apply to a job that they are faced with. Let them be able to solve problems from what they are learning. Knowledge that is learned and not applied is not knowledge. So that's what I'm going to say.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. So education has to be such engaging in a way that it allows the student to also contribute. Not just like we're coming and we're dumping everything on the student without giving them the opportunity to be able to interact and engage. And this is what technology is actually changing in our educational system. So with the use of technology, students are introduced to project-based learning, collaborations that enables them to apply their critical thinking, not just cramming. We can see what happened during the JAMB examination. Now, these students, they are very intelligent. Bring them on paper, they will do well. But when you give them computer, you see that they are not doing well. But when they are used to the system, you could see that they are just excelling because now they are applying critical thinking to what they are doing, not just cramming and having all the first class, all the beautiful grades. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Elfrida?
All right. I want to firstly say, these days, there's this popular saying that goes that education is a scam. Yes. Why is that really? Yes, because because the learners really can't relate to reality. So I feel education should actually imitate life. That's reality, the end game. So I agree with the other two speakers. It must be practical. It must be applicable. So during learning, Of course, there should be some strategies that should be, harnessed. We are so grateful now that we have great content, using the LMS that we have from, our software, for example, we use Educare, and also with the boards we use from WowBe boards, we're able to, show life lessons. You can simulate reality. So while the class is going on, you can actually project for them to see the end game. Like I said earlier on, what's the purpose of teaching if it's not to learn? What's the purpose of education if it's not to solve real problems? So at the end of the day, if we're able to have simulations embedded in our learnings, also gamification as well, so that students understand that, these strategies can be applied. It can help the learners think critically. You can just imagine having a class where you have our learners connected to learners from other parts of the world, and they're able to have a quiz, which also is interesting. I bet you children will come to school every day of the week.
All right.
So if we can apply these strategies, practical strategies, it should work.
Thank you very much. Alex, 1 minute, please.
Okay, so mine actually has to do with the assessments, like JAMB, WAEC. I think they need to have to start improving. I've already made those recommendations. They need to start applying critical thinking in their questions. WAEC told me that they are currently in government. If people that write government in WAEC, that's probably one of the most hardest exams because they have started introducing critical thinking. If all the exam bodies now apply critical thinking in all the assessments, schools will be forced to now teach children how to learn, knowing that for you to actually pass WAEC, you actually need to know it. So that's basically what my recommendations would be.
Layomi.
Thank you. To get into a high-level university in the United States, they're just not going to ask for your SAT score. You're going to have to write 3 essays. What are they testing?
Your critical thinking.
And they can't help you. You can't go to ChatGPT or some AI thing. They are checkers to know whether you've got 250 words. The topic will be set. You're going to write an essay that talks about you as a unique person. You've got to think every single sentence is a significant statement about your personality. Now it forces you to go back as a 17-year-old to think beyond what they have taught you in class, the application. Basically, you are selling yourself to an audience to say, I deserve a place in this institution. That is part of the end goal of secondary education, for example. You've got to be able to, we have, and I'm particular, I'll close with this, I'm particular about our teaching faculty. The quality of what our teachers are able to produce. We've got to go back, relook at the whole of that system. We have JAM today. That's basically just like SAT, just a score. But beyond that, when you take a student out of that school and you put them out on the stage, how do they solve problems? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, these are my panelists. Thank you very much. Would like to take questions if we can. Just a question.
How do we build quality assurance for educational institutions in the public space in Nigeria? If you can take that in 30 seconds or maybe a minute for us.
First thing is we need to actually look at the remuneration of teachers. The best in our classes are not the teachers. So the best in the classes go on to different careers, right? And the worst in the classes are the ones that we push to come and teach the next generation. So if we can be able to start paying the teachers like the oil company workers, right? Then we'll have the best in the classrooms. And with that, we can change.
Just to add to that.
Yeah.
Just to add to that. One of the challenges that the public sector in Nigeria and education is facing now is, and it's also the same thing for the private sector, has to do with the quality of the teacher. So I'll give you an example. A student has a challenge with calculus. Now, I'm not going into a subject that is history or anything. It's math. Typically, there are people who teach calculus for an hour and charge you 30,000 naira in Nigeria today after school. Yeah? I know teachers who are multimillionaires in this country because they're just extremely good at what they do. Now, that comes down to, from a quality assurance perspective, what we're seeing from a federal government perspective is we are seeing a reduction. If you take a subject like physics, for example, what the federal government is doing is, if there's a great physics teacher, and this is what technology does for us, especially from a WOWB perspective, a great physics teacher in Lagos can teach 365 schools across Nigeria at the same time. One excellent teacher delivering content nationwide makes sure that learning is, what's the right word now? Democratized. And with that, especially for the finishing classes, they want to go write that exam in physics. You're sure that SS3 people, you've got a teacher who can deliver that content right and can deliver it to specification. And that's a very, very powerful tool from a quality assurance perspective that we need to keep on building on. I agree with Alex, very, very important that we raise that standard in terms of what they earn, but I think teachers as well, with technology supporting them, must push themselves further to make themselves very, very relevant. I'll close with this. Technology is not going to replace the teacher, but any teacher that's not using technology will be replaced. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have one of the students here.
Good afternoon. I'm Chibike Ojigwalemo by name, and I'm from Techo School. My question to the panel is, EdTech has been made to advance learning in various areas of schooling, but what really is advised? Higher education learning, or an individual putting in effort to learn a skill to help probably set up a business or something? Because we see that sometimes someone can go to higher education and spend a few years of his early stage of his life learning about probably computer science, and he could get out and he couldn't run a simple program. Well, the person eventually comes out of school and still go back to learning that skill to invest or increase himself in that particular career. So what exactly is EdTech for? Is it to advance dreams, like to make people learn skills that will help them in the future, or to encourage them and make learning in schools better? Meanwhile, skills are the advantage or the increased.
Wow. Who's taking that?
Okay, so let me go first. While I was in school, I studied agric engineering in UNN. But 60% of the time, I was learning what I'm doing now. And I was learning it using technology. So while I go to class because I need to pass, I spend most of the time learning and working for what is required in my future. When I finished from UNN, I don't think I ever saw the certificate more than after the day I collected it. And what is taking me ahead is what I learned through technology. So technology gives you freedom. Technology gives you power. Technology makes your life limitless. So using technology, and then I use the power, now is even 100 times more powerful, even with the evolution of AI. So as a child, you know your path. You know what you want. All the tools you need to learn in the most chronological way. Why I use chronology is this. Learning is sequential. You can't be in primary 1 and you want to force yourself to learn what someone in primary 6 is learning. Knowledge can be everywhere, but those knowledge is not important at the point. If you start in a sequential way, you have the basics, you have the foundation that makes you learn what you need to learn when you get to primary 6. So the long and short of it is, use technology to explore the limitless power that it brings. And if you use it very well, that can actually help you sort your way out.
All right, thank you very much.
What value do we place on education? Education is actually the bedrock of any society, and my young lad has spoken very well. Nothing of value is free, and nothing of value is cheap. I've had this conversation over time where I remember years ago, there was this talk that, in the Western world, they have free education. And someone said the government pays for it, nothing is free. So the truth of the matter is, culturally, we need to accept and understand that education has its value, and education is not cheap. Education should be paid for. It's only in Nigeria that, let's talk about currently what is happening. The price of everything has gone up. For example, transportation has gone up over more than 10 times in terms of the costs, buying fuel, but education has not increased that much. It has an impact on those delivering education as well. We have teachers that are underpaid. So I'm so glad that came up earlier on. But if we don't look at education as an investment, which is going to yield returns in the long run, as a cultural aspect of our living in Nigeria, we will never get there. So please, culturally, education should not be cheap. It should be valuable, and it should be paid for rightfully. We're not talking about exploitation here, but the right amount. And I believe with that, the future of our young ones will be secured.
Okay.
So I rest my case.
We're almost out of time. The next sets are done. We will not be able to take any more. I must apologize. But first and foremost, thank you for listening to the fantastic students and their questions. You guys have made it worth my time. And to our panelists, I take a bow. Thank you very much.